All right, guys. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Shad, and I am your host. Welcome to today's episode of Tales from the Cryptid, the only show on Ram Radio where we talk about things in a little crazier and a little more hectic way. Today, we are joined by our wonderful guest and actually a big man in the studio.
Yeah, I'm quite large.
Yeah. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Well, I'm not a small person.
Well,
They can't see that because we're like proportional to each other.
Yeah, proportionally, we're pretty
even,
right now.
but
yeah,
I'm not short.
Yeah.
Or am I? You'll never know.
Anyways, introduce yourself.
I'm Brian. I'm the tech director. I think I've been on every show we have.
Yeah.
You know what? I haven't been on Open Book this semester. But
we'll
I've been
have to fix that soon.
Yeah, we will have to fix that soon. But I've been on almost every show we have except Faculty Spotlight and Open Book.
Nice. Anything you want to tell the fans? Maybe a new little fun factoid so they can like make little collections of
a little
Brian
collection
facts.
of Brian factoids.
His last name is Moore.
I'm Brian with a Y, not Brian with an I.
Yeah, he's Brian with a Y. If you spell it Brian or something like that,
yeah,
we will have problems.
I'll know. I'll know if you do it.
He's like Santa Claus, but instead of knowing when you're awake or not, he knows when you spell his name with a Y or an I. Kind of like on the power scale, a little lower, but you know.
It's like cursed knowledge, because someone will just be writing some random word with a BRI in it, and I'll just like get like a brief flash, and then they add letters after that could be my name. It's horrible, man.
No, I was assuming it's kind of like the Death Note thing, where like it had to have intent, like you had to be picturing that person in their mind. So like not just like writing either, but like texting, you know.
Oh, they're texting me and they type BRI, realize and go back and BRY.
Yeah, and then like in the before they even send the message, you're like, I know what you did.
Yeah, he just random out of the blue text, I know what you were thinking.
So if you couldn't tell, this is the vibes for this episode.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's Tales from the Cryptid.
Exactly.
We're talking about things like kind of like the Shinigami in Death Note, but
yeah,
realer.
kind of.
A little realer.
Well, technically, Shinigami could be something we talk about at a later date.
I suppose.
But that is not what we're here for today. But before we get into any of that, for those of you who are new or those of you who do not remember, Tales from the Cryptid is a show where we talk about cryptids. Cryptids are creatures, species, plants, animals,
entities.
Sentient or non-sentient, no matter what.
Yeah.
Basically, it's creatures that have not been yet identified by scientists as, like, factually this is a species, but at the same time has some evidence varying in terms of, like,
veracity, perhaps?
Yeah, that's the word I'd use, veracity. Basically, people think it exists. We don't know for sure yet if it does or not.
And that ranges in like, scope from things like aliens to, like, Megalodon is still alive conspiracies to, you know.
To, like, this one subspecies of, like, gopher.
Yeah.
Or it's like I saw like, platypus.
Yeah.
I'll use that example every day if I have to.
People thought it was...
Yeah.
I mean, it's a ridiculous concept.
Yeah. Like partially, like, amphibious... Like, what would you say it's an amphibious creature, or would it be like a semi-aquatic?
It's a beaver with duck feet and a bill.
And it apparently lays eggs, but also... Lays
eggs, but has, you know, gives milk to its babies and has venom.
Yeah, that is a crazy creature. It must
ridiculous animal.
It couldn't decide what skill tree to go down.
Yeah.
When it was creating its gene pool. Anyways.
Yeah, we could get into that metaphor more, but
hey, it's all right. So today we're gonna be talking about probably one of the biggest cryptids out there. Even if you don't know what the term cryptid means, I'd be willing to bet like my entire future fortune that you've heard of this creature. It is Bigfoot.
So Shad said it. $12 is on the line here. If you don't know about Bigfoot.
You didn't have to call me out like that.
In fact, I didn't have to call you out.
Okay. But yeah,
Bigfoot.
Yeah, Bigfoot. So normally this is when I'd ask the guest, do you know what Bigfoot is, or do you know who Bigfoot is? But I feel like if I asked that and you said no, first I'd owe you $12.
Yeah, but you would owe me $12.
And second, I'd question if you have something called the internet.
Yeah, if I've like consumed media in my life.
Yeah, it's like, why are you here if you don't know what the internet is?
It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, he actually thinks we're just actually going through like radio transmission. So like people with like old tiny radios are listening.
Well,
into
I mean,
this.
like I think there's probably like a little hole in the wall somewhere, and someone like in a theater is watching us. Yeah, it's like that. No, but Bigfoot, I'm fairly aware.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's sort of in the sphere of things I've taken some interest in.
Yeah.
Now,
so
I'm coming at it from a different perspective as some people, because some people are coming to Bigfoot from like fully the like it's real and it's
Yeah,
out
there's
there.
there's Bigfoot believers out there
yeah.
that make flat earthers look
Sane.
Like, well, maybe not sane, but like they look less fanatic about their belief.
It's like, oh yeah, they're taking a reasonable stance on this belief.
There are some people, I believe, who, this might be a hot take, I feel like there's some people who believe in Bigfoot more than some people believe in their religion. Like, they have that much faith. They're willing to die for the commitment that this.
Dude, there's a show
real.
on Animal Planet. Sidetrack.
I completely forgot about that show.
There's that show on Animal Planet where it's just like 4 white guys and one of their wives just trudging around the woods
looking for Bigfoot
in the middle of nowhere with night vision. I'm shocked no one got shot.
Yeah,
like,
or like attacked by wild animals.
Absolutely. Like
these people are looking for Bigfoot. They're not gonna be ready for a bear. They're gonna be like,
no.
Was that Bigfoot I saw?
Bigfoot, is that you? And then a grizzly bear rips his throat out or something.
Yeah, just like bear maul. But anyways, this is a great episode, by the way. We're gonna have a lot of material.
I love it here.
So Bigfoot is probably one of the most well-known cryptids, but maybe not many people know about kind of the origins of Bigfoot.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to kind of dive into a little bit really quickly here. Do you know exactly how long ago Bigfoot was like first recorded or like sighted?
So just about the earliest. Okay, so the actual like name and term gained popularity in the U.S.
Well, yeah,
middle 20th century. So we're thinking like the 50s, things like that.
Yeah, like 50s, stuff like that.
Right, but there have been things sort of like Bigfoot that have colloquial names or that are more specific to a region.
Yeah.
That go back to like first contact with Native Americans. And there's even some pre-Columbian things that have trickled down that you could say are either directly related to or adjacent to. And I'm just going to throw this in there because I have a little bit of a background in this.
This is why I love having Brian. He's like, for those of you who don't know, another factoid for him. He was a former history major.
History minor right now.
Yeah.
I know a lot of things about things that happened.
A very good way to describe history.
But there's also a pretty significant connection because a lot of particularly the English-speaking migrants to North America in like the colonial periods, lots of them are from sort of a Celtic background. Obviously, you do get the English, but you also have lots of Irish and Scottish, particularly, and from those sort of northern parts of Great Britain and Ireland. And they have a remarkable number of what we would call like folklore creatures. Yeah, right.
It's crazy how many they actually have when we think about it.
And lots of them sort of do similar things to what Bigfoot has been. Do similar things to certain things that Native American myths will say things do. Yeah. That's super vague, but I actually read about one earlier this week that was basically a version of the Fae that comes from some of the like the Atlanta, like Georgia area, and those blended together to create some of the local stuff we see in like Appalachia. But just to break it down a little bit further, Bigfoot is highly regionalized, right? So there's that sort of national idea of and Bigfoot.
Yeah. But then there's also the kind of smaller, like, less national. Like, this is Bigfoot's origin.
The regional ones. Yeah. And the classic one is the Pacific Northwest and the Northwest
Pacific
Plains.
Northwest, Oregon,
you have like Sasquatch, right?
Yeah.
That's what they call it up there. That's become a little more nationalized because it's highly known about. But you also have things like, the skunk ape, which is from northern Florida. Super funny name for something, but it's called the skunk ape because apparently it smells terrible. But you have these.
Name me an ape that smells good.
Some people smell good.
Well, a guy
in one of my classes smelled really good.
Well, we're not apes. We're Homo sapiens.
No, we're great apes. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I'll admit to that.
Look, if you're not a great ape, then like
I don't think I'm necessarily great yet. I'd say I'm pretty good.
Yeah, you're like a bonobo. You're a lesser ape.
No, not lesser. There's like lesser, there's greater, and then there's pretty good.
Medium apes. Yeah, I'm a medium ape.
I'm a mid ape.
Mid ape.
All right. Back to Bigfoot.
But you do have these highly regionalized forms of what sort of theorized to be sort of the same creature, and that extends up further north where you have things that are basically Bigfoot, but have a regional name and regional stories attached to them, especially in places like rural upstate New York, rural Pennsylvania, these northeastern areas that are heavily wooded, fairly mountainous at points. One I have like a deep love for is the tree men.
The tree
from
men.
Appalachia. The tree men, or the tree knockers, sometimes you'll hear them say, because they communicate allegedly by rapping on trees.
Which could just be a...
Could be woodpeckers,
could be
any kind of wildlife doing it.
Could just be a bunch of not so intelligent wildlife bumping into the trees.
Could be branches breaking, could be a number of things.
Yeah.
But
could be some people trolling.
It could be some... Precisely, right? But in my encounters with, things like Bigfoot stories, you generally have two kinds of encounters. And it's, I saw a large hairy figure walking on two legs, or Bigfoot took something from me, or did something to me.
Or it's like I had a spiritual experience where I met Bigfoot, or he spoke. Like that one show was like one of them was like telepathically speaking with the Bigfoot tribe.
Yeah. And generally those are the two categories that things fall into. And things like the skunk ape and the Sasquatch more fall into the hairy, biped, ape-looking thing you saw.
But you weren't sure.
Precisely. And things like the tree knockers and various other flavors of things like that tend to fall more into the did something to me category.
Yeah. And that actually brings me into a pretty good, to the next section of the Sasquatch history. I was going to bring up that you're right, it does go back really far. It goes farther than most people would expect. But
if we want to get into the Native American bag, we can talk about the Saskats, but that's a little beyond the scope.
Yeah. But I will say that people who would say Bigfoot is very... like, things that they could say is like, this is probably Bigfoot or something that people would claim as Bigfoot nowadays.
Yes.
That starts around, like, the 1800s. Yeah. Like, 19th century, right? Yeah.
And you have... those are more regional.
Yeah.
Things like Sasquatch, but...
and that...
the mythos of that is sort of comes into being in the what I'm going to call the death of the American frontier.
Yeah.
Where you still have...
you still have a little bit of unexplored...
well, you still have dudes out, like, trapping...
yeah.
And just out in the woods, basically. You have people who live...
yeah, you still have places that weren't, like, urban or urban or suburban, or not urban or suburban, urban or rural.
Yeah.
Like, there are some places that are just wildlife.
Yeah, and those places are now connected enough. Right. The thing I'm going to use here in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Fort Concho. In town, you can go look at it still. My parents got married there. Fort Concho is one of these things I'm kind of talking about because this area of Texas, up until the railroad gets put in, it was basically a couple houses in Fort Concho, and then nothing until you hit El Paso, and then nothing until you hit New Mexico, and then the other way is you hit, like Austin and some of the towns around there in the Central Texas area. But there are places like that where you could literally get on a horse and ride for 2 days and not see another human.
Yeah. That's like somewhere where like you could disappear if you wanted to for like a couple of weeks at a time.
A month. Right, and no one would ask any questions because obviously he's just out doing stuff.
Yeah.
But
or if they're asking questions, they'd be like, I don't know, he's somewhere over there. He went that way and he hasn't come back.
And lots of these stories originate from people doing things like that. Of just doing essentially their profession, but their profession mandates them to be out in the wilderness for some reason. So you have like professional buffalo hunters, professional fur trappers. That's more of a northern U.S. thing and Canada thing.
And
we
honestly,
don't really have trappers down here.
That seems like it'd be a pretty cool job, like a pretty sick. Yeah, that seems like it'd be a little fun, at least at the start. Like I can imagine the first month or two being fun because you're still learning the job and it hasn't gotten like monotonous.
Well, but even then, the amount of territory you're covering every day is going to be different.
Oh yeah,
especially if you are in north, like sort of the Great Lakes region or southern Canada. That every day is going to be different. Depends what you're trapping too, but
yeah.
Excuse me. I will say, I think the point I'm trying to get at here with that death of the American frontier, these places are finally starting to be connected to the rest of the country enough for things like Bigfoot stories to travel. Yeah, and that's why we start seeing so many of them in like the very early 20th centuries because
that's when like people are actually able to get the word out. Yes. Be like, oh my god, I saw this like giant.
There's this kind of famous one. It was miners in Northern California
It's actually funny. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, and they see like these giant footprints, and some guy gets killed by like a rock or something. I don't remember the specifics, but the thing I do remember about how it traveled was they tell the story to a reporter in a bar in the little town they live in, and the reporter writes a story on it for the local newspaper, and then a bigger newspaper in San Francisco sees it, picks the column up,
mass prints it.
Yeah, prints it en masse, and then a newspaper in like Chicago sees it, goes, "Oh, that's cool." Picks it up, prints it, and then it's national news.
Yeah.
Right, and so the nation gets exposed to this because that's how everyone got their news at that point, was the newspaper. And like a year after it happened, it's still being reprinted and things like that. And we're starting to see things like that in these little stories that would have just stayed a weird thing some guy saw out in the woods.
And it would have just been local legend.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't know about Bigfoot at all.
Yeah.
If it wasn't during that time period.
And those things are starting to explode when America is in that period where you still have dudes who are professional loggers. You still have dudes who are miners who mine out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, like, and not just like miners that like have power tools. Like these are actually like they're
dudes
just
with pickaxes.
they're doing hard labor
Yep.
for 20 hours and then coming home to sleep for 4.
Yeah, it's dudes with pickaxes breaking rocks, basically.
Yeah.
But that is sort of the beginning of the current mainstream understanding of Bigfoot.
Yeah. And to kind of like go into detail, because I do have like one or two stories that I wanted to bring up. So I said that it started in like the 18th century, when we can kind of like allude to, or not 18th, 19th century, 1800s.
It gets weird.
Yeah.
It's one before, I hate it, but I get why it's there, but I hate it.
Yeah. 1800s, 19th century, that's when like we can start alluding to things that come out to be Bigfoot.
Yep.
But there's a story that some people would attribute to being Bigfoot from 1904, where I believe it was Native American tribes or something close to the Native American tribes.
Very often you'll see a group of European Americans with some Native American guides.
Yeah.
Like two Native American dudes who are guiding them through this area.
Yeah. Like Lewis and Clark. Very...
Well, they had one Native American woman with a baby, but yeah.
Yeah. And she was actually the MVP of that group. She was keeping them from dying.
Shout out Sacagawea. She a real one.
Yeah. There's a reason why she's on the gold coin.
Yep.
But anyways, it's around 1904 where you start hearing these stories, not about Bigfoot or like giant apes, but giant people, like giant humanoids.
Large people.
Yeah, large people that are like, if the average person at that time was like what, like 5'6", like probably maybe
I think
even
it's
5'6".
between like 5'5" and 5'7".
Yeah, like a little smaller than our national average right now.
Very tall would be like 6 foot.
Yeah, and we have these stories of these creatures that look to be about 7-8 feet tall, and they're hairy. They're like hairy humans, and they're very. They said they were very aggressive sometimes. Like they didn't know, obviously, if they were just wild people out there, they wouldn't know English, like any languages.
I think I kind of know what you're talking about. And when you say hairy, you mean like hairy for a person.
Yeah, hairy for a person. Like I'm not talking about like
like not
like fur. I'd be like Brian.
Yeah,
like that type of hair.
Yeah, kind of like my beard, but thinner on your whole body.
Thinner on your whole body. Yeah. So like you have like these hairy people, and then that kind of starts segueing into, I would say like 1924, like the early 1920s, where he was talking about these coal miners. And this, keep in mind that story from 1904 is like Pacific Northwest, Oregon, and we're still in the Pacific Northwest, I believe. And for this part of the story, there are these coal miners, and they start seeing these giant humanoid-looking like hairy creatures. Like this is what they're starting to see is like fur. Like that's where they start seeing more like fur.
Well, like the hair on your head.
Yeah. And they're running around, and the miners are freaking out because they're like, what the heck did I just see?
Yeah.
And so,
what is that? What is going on?
Yeah, and that causes them some mass hysteria for a little while.
Yeah.
And then they go to the Native American tribes, and they're like, oh, so you've met them.
Yeah.
And what are you talking about?
What do you mean them?
It's like, what do you mean them? It's like, oh, we've known about them for so long that we thought that was common knowledge. How did you guys not know about that?
Yeah.
And so and they start talking about this, not necessarily a tribe, but like a group of like these creatures. And they're very unpredictable and very aggressive. So we take caution around them and we try to avoid them if we can.
Yeah.
And if not, we make sure that we do not come off as aggressive for them to attack us. And so these coal miners are like freaking out, and I think that's when it starts like getting around about Bigfoot. And of course, it doesn't start kicking off until around the 50s and so on after that, when they can start getting like actual photos.
Yeah, there's the classic Bigfoot film that's a dude in a ape suit, right?
Yeah.
I forget what name it is. I don't know why I got flashbanged by this Zapruder film. That's the film of JFK getting shot. It's not the Zapruder film.
That would be funny. Just randomly in the Zapruder film, they go to a Bigfoot truck.
Like JFK assassinated by a CIA-trained Bigfoot. That's a new one. I've never heard that one
theory.
before.
Encode this into your brain, Bigfoot believers.
No, I think you've hit on something. You described basically what I would call a Sascat.
Yeah.
Right, or the Saskats. And obviously, I'm no expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. But, excuse me. But I think what you described is shockingly common in a place like the Pacific Northwest and things like that. Sometimes you'll see it. There is a Yosemite. The people Yosemite's named after.
Yeah.
The national park in the mountain have a myth where essentially their creation myth. There was a race of sentient, intelligent bears created before humans. All right. Or you have the Saskats and similar related myths from like the Algonquin peoples of the Pacific Northwest. And you basically hit the nail with the head with what they were. They were large, like 6'6" to 8 foot tall, hairier people who were a little less civilized than their Native American counterparts.
Yeah. And
these stories were not easily spread to Europeans, particularly, except missionaries. We'll get into missionaries in a minute. But were not spread as much as they could have been to Europeans, because it's kind of looks crazy if you're saying, oh yeah, there's these race of savages out in the woods who are tall and hairy and speak a different language from us.
You're talking about George Washington?
And speak a different language from us, and also we've been at war with them for 10 generations or whatever.
Yeah, and you're like, are you sure you're not just messing with like...
You sure that's not just the people down the road?
Yeah, and they're like, no, they're different. They're savages. They don't even know common tongue.
That's either that's the reaction, or it's, oh, so you just mean normal Native Americans because you guys are also just right.
So you're talking about a less primitive, or like a more primitive version of yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the fear, is they're gonna think, oh, that's what all of you are, right?
Yeah,
really.
They're laughing in their little posh accents, like, oh, these people think they're civilized.
And when these stories do get told, it's pretty often to Christian missionaries.
Yeah.
Particularly Catholic ones in the very early American period, but that's because the Spanish. Later it would be things like Anglican missionaries, or just broadly Christian missionaries.
I would have preferred to call them conquerors, but...
Well, what like Christian? Yeah, I suppose you kind of got a point there. It took me a minute.
It took a minute for the history buff to go through his reels.
It took me to go like, wait, what is he talking about? I was like, oh wait, no, he's got a point.
He was flipping through the pages.
I feel like a file cabinet. I'm like, Christianity.
But it's a little subsection.
But when lots of these Native American sort of cultural stories get told to Christian missionaries, because they're interested in these cultural things, they either get syncretized with Christianity. So
yeah, they're like, oh, you're talking about this thing.
Those are demons.
Yeah, those are demons.
Those are the agents of Satan, right?
Yeah, you need God.
Right. And they're generally a shocking amount of Native American religions are monotheistic. They have a god, and those are extremely syncretized because, oh yeah, that's the Christian God. You're just kind of worshiping him wrong, right?
Leave it to the Spaniard Christians.
Dude, leave it to the Spanish. Well, actually, leave it to the Scottish.
True.
But lots of these get told to missionaries or to French trappers who are living among the Native Americans. And if they're trappers, they don't repeat those stories because why would you? But if they're missionaries, they either get syncretized or written off, so they almost never get written down.
Yeah.
So we have very little knowledge about what these things are because so many of them were effectively erased. But the ones we do have are basically... I'm going to say basically there's a lot of depth to this, and like I said, I'm no expert, but they're essentially saying, yeah, these are people who live out in the woods and are hairier.
They're taller.
They're hairier, they're bigger, they're taller, don't have the same kind of technology and understanding of the world that we do.
And they're a lot angrier.
Yeah. And sometimes you will see them be able to be reasoned with. There are a few sort of Saskat stories where they are... like cognizant and you can like bargain with them, there are a few stories where they will like trade, and they will sometimes take human wives or human husbands. I don't know if there is a story where they take a human husband, but I'm trying to be inclusive here, okay? But no, they will
care Ram Radio, care about equality.
But they will take a human spouse, or they will take human children sometimes. There's another one where this is a story I'm off the cuff from memory, where it's a young Algonquin man, and he tells his cousin, who tells a missionary this. And the cousin tells the missionary, yeah, he was out hunting for a bear one day because they had been having a bear problem for whatever reason. He's hunting a bear.
Yeah.
And he's got a rifle, and he sees a large, hairy mass of flesh, black, hairy mass from a distance, and goes, I bet that's a bear. And then it sort of stands up on on two legs, and he goes, oh, that's definitely a bear. And he shoots it. And then it turns around, and it's a person. And he goes, oh my God, what am I doing? And then it runs way off into the woods, and he sort of tracks it because you just shot a guy. Right? Like, you just shot a guy. Like, you got to figure out what's going on with this. Tracks it back to basically a cliff face. There's like a blood trail, tracks it to a cliff face. He comes back, and he talks to their sort of village leader, village chief, village elder. I don't know what words they would be using, but
yeah,
the leadership of the village. And they go, oh yeah, you just shot a Sasquatch. It's an accident. It's not the end of the world, but we got to make up for this. We got to give them something.
And he's like, what?
He's like, what are you talking about? I've never been told about this. And they go, yeah, we kind of keep it under wraps because if we tell it to too many people, it'll get out to the whites, and then they'll think we're crazy. Right? And so they bring it some gifts and some things, and they go, oh, where did it go? Did you see? And he goes, yeah, I just walked up to this cliff face. And they go, okay, we'll leave a message for them. We'll meet at that cliff face. And they this dude... And they bring them some gifts. I think it was like some food and like clothing and some like wine or beer or something like that, right? Some sort of items to make up for this. To explain this is an accident, I thought you were a bear kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they get back to this cliff face, and a portion of the cliff face has been moved to the left, and there is a large cave, and a larger individual walks up out of the cave. And this young man and the sort of village elder walk up to it, and the village elder begins talking with the large man. And he goes, yeah, sorry, it was an accident. Here's some stuff to make up for it. And then the dude walks back into the cave and slides this gigantic, like, 2-ton boulder back in front of the cave entrance. And they go, yeah, you'll never see them again. That was the one time they're going to... You snuck up on one somehow. You're never ever going to see them again. Don't try to. Don't look for them. And if this dude tells his cousin that, and his cousin tells a missionary, and that's how we know any details about it.
Yeah. What's funny about that is when you said that, it reminds me of like that one scene from The Croods where like the dad caveman is like, keeps the cave closed like a giant boulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, so we are running a little bit low on time.
Yeah, we've gone off on a huge tangent.
Yeah, but that's really good. I think honestly we might be able to go for a little bit longer.
Oh, we could totally
episode.
do like 45 minutes on this.
Yeah. So my next question, or I guess next topic really, would be kind of discussing like Bigfoot in general and the way of like what kind of abilities or like what kind of supernatural capabilities do you think this creature has? Because remember, most cryptids, some of them are going to be normal, like platypus.
Or the thylacine.
Yeah. Or like there's this one that people thought was like just a golden tree. Turns out it was just like a golden leafed tree where it like looked like it was golden.
Just tree with gold leaves.
Yeah. But... Yeah, so... But then there's some that are like vampires, ghosts, werewolves that have supernatural abilities. So
I have a fun werewolf story for you after this.
Where do you think the Bigfoot section would be? Like in terms of...
I think the most likely, if we are just subscribing to supernatural things, are just real, right? I think something sort of like... I don't know the word for it. I'm going to use the word like active camouflage, but not like the invisible kind.
Yeah. Where it's like they're able to blend in really well with the environment.
They're indistinguishable from the background, right? Unless you are really trying to look for them. I think that is a very fun supernatural power to ascribe to things like this, because it makes them easier to sort of justify in reality. Yeah.
I can definitely see that. And also because like the Theskeet, as you said, kind of had like beyond human strength. I think it's very safe to say that Bigfoot probably also.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the reconstructions.
The hairier they get, the stronger they get.
I don't know if you've seen the constructions of Gigantopithecus blackie.
No, I haven't.
It's basically a 7-foot tall orangutan. They're extinct now. They were in Southeast Asia about 1 million years ago, but they're extinct now. And they're generally with great apes, and this applies to humans, the bigger and taller they are, the bigger the muscles tend to be. I know that sounds really reductive, but even if you just scale a human frame up and you scale the proportions of a human up, that thing is going to be ridiculously strong.
Yeah.
Like, even considering how ridiculously strong your average 6'6" human is, how strong a 7-foot humanoid who's supposed to be 7 feet tall is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and for those of you like at home, and kind of for the people in the back, don't worry. Since we're really getting a lot of material on this, we're gonna keep it going for a little bit longer.
We're going.
So just sit back and relax. And
we're going. We're talking. We're chatting.
Yeah, but
we're yapping.
Yeah. So would you say if we had to put two abilities, we already have like active camouflage, like, but not like invisibility.
Yeah.
It's just like. It's almost like what the military tries to do with like their camouflage clothing, but it's like actively able to change.
Yeah.
And the second one is supernatural strength.
Yeah.
Do you think that it would be, because of those muscles, do you think it'd be supernaturally more durable than an average person? Like, do you think it could survive gunshots?
I mean, we do see with other large great apes that, thicker bones.
The bone density is for sure.
Thicker bones, denser muscles, that can make a difference. We see that especially with things like gorilla attacks. Very few gorilla attacks in recorded history, but the ones that are there and where people are able to fight back. Things that would kill a human will not kill larger great apes.
Unless it's at a very vulnerable part in the body.
Yeah. So things like...
the eyes.
Well, I mean more like bullets-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Bullets that would put a human out of commission will only severely injure certain large great apes. So things like your average rifle shot that a human is not, and 95% of people are not just going to be able to go, oh, that hurt, and keep going at you.
Yeah, like if you shoot somebody with a rifle, they're going to be on the ground in like
it's
a
gonna
couple
hurt.
of seconds, and they're not going to get back up. They're going to be like, oh, you shot me in my shoulder. The gorilla will turn around and be like,
we'll just smack you with the other shoulder, right?
Yeah, like, what'd you just do to
And
me?
now that shot might kill it, but it's not going to kill things immediately. We can have a whole conversation about that after the show.
Yeah.
But I think just describing size to this thing gives it a degree of strength and a degree of durability that is no human's going to have. Especially if we do take that sort of bigger muscles, larger muscles, more dense muscles, more dense bones. Human bones bounce bullets off them all the time. I think there's no reason this thing couldn't have a very strong rib cage, a very powerfully built shoulders, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
That are just going to help you with projectiles of any kind.
It's almost like it's naturally Kevlar. Or not Kevlar, but like body plate.
Well, but we see that with some... We're getting in my prehistoric bag now because we're talking about extinct animals. But we see that with things like extinct variants of rhinoceroses. We see that with woolly mammoths, where hunting mammoths is hard because their skin is like 2 inches thick.
Yeah.
And you have to get through the skin to get to the stuff inside you need to kill it.
That actually hurts.
Uh-huh. And they have very wide ribs, very thick ribs. So killing a mammoth with a spear is a remarkable feat.
Yeah, I don't know how people did that back in the day.
You get 20 dudes, all with spear throwers, and you get lucky twice, or you run them off a bison jump, if you know what that is, which is basically a cliff. You run them off a cliff. What a morbid term. But no, I think Bigfoot, especially if they're living in the far north parts of North America, they need some kind of cold resistance. We see things like that with layers of fat under the skin. Yeah, that's fairly common in cold weather mammals. Could make this thing very difficult to kill with sharp force trauma. Could make it resistant to, I
mean, obviously it's going to be resistant to probably like most blunt forces too.
Except the head.
Except for the head.
That's kind of just a living thing's problem.
Yeah, it's like wherever the brain is, not that good of a place to
you hit something
at.
hard enough with like basically a metal rod in the head, it'll die. But
yeah,
we're getting into like logistics problems with that. But no, if we're trying to do like an optimal Bigfoot, we're talking like a cold weather.
Yeah, we're trying to min-max our Bigfoot.
Yeah, basically fat under the skin, thicker hair, powerfully built. The cold weather stuff tends to be much larger, much smaller than normal. So a large animal, you're basically talking about a bipedal moose with bigger bones. And moose are
terrifying.
They're hard to kill.
If you've ever seen a photo of a moose, like if you see an animal out there and you're like, oh, that's a pretty big deer. That's like a elk, right?
Yeah.
And then if you see
caribou.
Yeah, and then if you look and you see a deer and you're like, that looks like a monster from the dawn of time.
Yeah.
That's a moose.
Moose are terrifying. I've seen one in Alaska. They're taller than you think.
Yeah, they're taller than cars.
Yeah.
They can if you were to hit a deer with a car, you're like,
well, you hit the deer with your bumper on most cars.
Yeah, you hit the deer with a bumper, and you're like, man, my windshield is busted. You hit a moose with a car,
moose with your car,
which most likely they're going to be hitting their leg.
Yeah, you take the legs out from under them, and then they fall and crush your car.
Yeah, you hit the moose.
Like
you hit the
pounds.
moose. If you crash into a deer, like, oh my gosh, my car.
You might break a windshield if it goes up and over. You might mess up your lower bumper, your grill or whatever.
If you hit a moose, you're like,
if you live.
You're like, oh my god, I'm alive.
Yeah, I lived.
Yeah,
right. Moose are terrifying.
So if you had basically the moose of like woolly, like
if humans
apes,
are like mule deer, Bigfoot's like a moose. Is kind of the comparison? That's an absurd statement.
Mule deer.
Hey, they kind of look like mules.
Ugh. Anyways,
except for the whole antlers thing, but that's a whole other thing.
So we've had a little funny discussion about our min-maxed max statted out
the meta build for
Bigfoot. So now we're going to go into a quick little section where we're going to talk about some theories about Bigfoot. One of the theories I wanted to bring up is something I think we might have already touched on a little bit, so I want to see how you would react to this. There is a theory that kind of like how most creatures were, like bears and other types of like creatures that are kind of spread out, like bears especially, like
bears are the big one because they'll walk on two legs sometimes.
Yeah, and not just that, but also like bears. The theory goes that Bigfoot, if it is a species, it all started out in like one main area, and then when the continents like drifted apart, they kind of had they became different cryptids in a way. Like they became different species.
Like the Yeti.
Yeah, like I was actually going to say that. The Yeti, maybe even like the abominable snowman.
Yeah.
And then all the different variants in America alone that we've mentioned.
Probably a couple in Siberia we're not mentioning that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's from like a taxonomic perspective, I see that.
Yeah.
It's just that species has to come from Africa at some point. Even if we're talking about like the ancestral great ape, right? That species has to come from essentially Middle Africa. And I do kind of buy that something essentially boreal forest adapted could just get to North America with all the other animals that got to North America. Right, I buy that entirely. That's how we got, bears, deer, camels. Well, actually, pro tip, camels are paleontologically, they're North American. They're from here.
Yeah.
It's just they went extinct here and then in Asia. So, pro tip. So were horses, actually. Horses are North American and then went extinct here and the Spanish brought them back.
Nice. Wonderful thing the Spanish did that time. Mm-hmm. A lot better than their...
all the other stuff they did. Basically everything else they did.
So that's the first theory, and it kind of seems like you're not against the theory.
No, I think that... I mean, that's the way we... It's called the Great Columbian Biotic Interchange. Actually, wait, no, I lied. That's the one with North and South America. But something like that where they come across Beringia, that's plausible to me. We haven't found any evidence of non-human apes in North America.
Yeah.
We found monkeys in South America, but they got there. That's a whole other can of worms I don't really feel like opening.
I don't blame you.
They got there a different way. Let me just suffice to say, they didn't come over Beringia. But the only apes we know of in North America are humans.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some evidence to be uncovered, whatever. There's some paleontological stuff. But if Bigfoot is going to be in North America and it's going to be a real creature, it's going to come through Beringia.
Yeah. So that's the first theory. The second theory is actually we're going a little different. We're not just going to be talking about Bigfoot as an idea. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about an effect Bigfoot has had on history.
That's interesting.
And it all starts with Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, the goblin story?
Kind of. But it's also like, you know how people are like, why did Teddy Roosevelt suddenly care about preserving national parks?
Oh.
And obviously you think of Teddy Roosevelt, he's hunted for sport several times, right? People theorize it's he saw Bigfoot and
I know this. He established National Park Service to keep parts of America wild so Bigfoot could either A, survive against human persecution, or B, to keep them from waging war on us.
Yeah. That's actually the theory that I was going to say. It's either Teddy Roosevelt
out of love or out of fear.
Yeah. Or it could have been out of hate. He could have maybe, you know how they always talk about Teddy Roosevelt fighting a kangaroo or something? Maybe he fought Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And he came back and he was like, I don't want that thing on Americans.
Well, he has a story in one of his memoirs that was allegedly told to Teddy Roosevelt. I say allegedly told because there's a subtext to that. This happened to him, but he doesn't want to say it happened to him.
Yeah.
So he's saying some crazy old mountain man told them it happened to this dude, and he doesn't name any names.
Some crazy old mountain dude named Ted.
Yeah. But essentially he says the story goes that two men were going hunting up in the mountains in, I believe, Pennsylvania, somewhere in that northeast, northern, middle America, right? Somewhere in there. They're going hunting, and they have two mules, and they're going to go set traps and hunt for a day, and they have a base camp. And partner A and partner B, I'm just going to call them that because they aren't given names, but
yeah.
Partner A, the point of view character, goes out and hunts, does everything, and comes back a day late or something, right? Not abnormal. Stuff happens. But
especially back then.
But he finds their base camp they had set up completely trashed. His other partner's mule just gone. And he's like, that's weird. Okay, maybe it's bandits or something. So he builds a big fire, stays up all night with his gun, and he can sort of feel something out in the woods watching him.
Something's there. I can feel it.
And then the next day, his partner wanders back out of the woods and is like, we need to leave. And he goes, but what about our traps? What about the hunt? I have traps. And he goes, don't worry about your traps. We need to leave.
They've been taken care of.
Right, stuff like that. And so they pack the rest of their crap up on the one mule in their backs and leave. And obviously Teddy puts it in better prose than I did.
Yeah.
But the sort of the subtext there is Teddy Roosevelt is the POV character. This happened to him and a random friend, right? But he can't say that. And there's some veracity to things like that where you have... We talked a lot about this kind of thing earlier. But that... I don't know. As far as the national park stuff conspiracy, my distrust of the federal government is very strong.
Yeah, but we don't really need to get into too much detail about that. That's another little fun
Department
fact.
of Energy so much.
So the last theory, because it kind of seems like this theory we at least partially believe in, or at least we think there might be some things to look into there.
Yeah.
The third theory is the most outlandish. This one I don't truly believe in, but I wanted to bring it up anyways. It is that Bigfoot is an alien, and it is an alien's attempt at being human.
Oh, I knew there was going to be a Bigfoot is an alien.
Yeah.
I've heard that one a bunch. Bigfoot as an alien's attempt at making a person or being a person.
Yeah. Maybe it's not necessarily an alien itself, or it tried to make a human.
Yeah.
And it didn't make a human correctly, and it's ugh.
Just throw that on Earth.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Yeah, just go
dump
that.
Or they're actively looking at him. He's like,
yeah.
Let's see what happens if we put him back into society.
Let's see what happens. And just
yeah,
just runs out in the woods. We're getting into my skepticism about alien life.
Yeah.
Because then you have things statistically it's guaranteed, near guaranteed there is alien life.
Yeah. It just comes to the point of what do we classify as alien life?
Yeah.
Do we think that there's aliens out there that are as smart or smarter than us?
Yeah, that are more intelligent, have more advanced technology than us.
And they've gotten to the point where they
solve
intergalactic travel.
Are flying around another solar system dropping,
planet-destroying
abominations on planets, right? Like,
yeah.
What are we doing? The other one I've kind of seen is Bigfoot as like a government experiment gone horribly awry.
Yeah.
Like Bigfoot is like a failed super soldier program.
They saw Captain America before Captain America as a thing.
They were like, let's do that, but make him hairy.
Yeah. We put too much hormones in there.
We gave him too much juice. So let him out in the parks.
We made him undergo puberty 3 times, not twice.
3 times.
And we cannot get him to shave.
Dude. Yeah, let's move on from that.
We
need to talk about that. I think probably my final bit of skepticism on this. My last thought with that is going to be if Bigfoot was real and was more than sort of a mythological function or like an urban legend, I think we would have found a dead one.
Yeah. That's also the main backdraw against this, why some people obviously don't believe in Bigfoot and why science hasn't confirmed it, is that we haven't found like genuine evidence. We haven't found like how they discovered other creatures. They've found like this may sound a little gross, but like fecal, like
have they found coprolites, fossilized poop, non-fossilized poop?
Yeah.
Have they found bones, a corpse, teeth?
Yeah, like literally anything.
That's how we know about Gigantopithecus blacki. We found I say we as a species.
Yeah.
But they're like entire mouths full of Gigantopithecus teeth just being sold in markets as dragon teeth in China, right?
Yeah.
Like, where is the physical remains?
Yeah, that's where a lot of these theories kind of get shut down.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to think about, and honestly,
it's super fun.
And honestly, any day now we could just be proven wrong about there being no scientific evidence.
Well, dude, I kind of like thinking about it as mythology.
Yeah.
Up until the point where it's proven real.
Yeah.
Right, because then you can track it as.
So let's see what actually is real in this mythology and what isn't.
Well, and if you look at it from that, like, here's my comm major angle, the like ethnography, sociology perspective, the way people talk about this stuff is fascinating.
Yeah.
The way it spreads is so interesting.
Yeah, especially since you brought up dragons, how some people would be like, there's maps that say beware of dragons, so clearly dragons exist. Dragons. And that's how they were communicating, hey, this is a very dangerous area. Your ship might not make it back. And it could just be like storms. Like storms are frequent there.
Or weird currents, or it's shallower than you think it is.
Yeah. It could literally just be like that, and people will be like, nope, it says beware of dragons.
Yeah. Obviously there are sea serpents there.
Yeah. Clearly it was a night fury.
Yeah. Guys, look, there were Vikings in Southeast Asia. We know this. I say that there were.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways.
There was a Norse colony in India. Whole other topic for a whole other day.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that will have to conclude our episode. We're definitely a little over time.
We're like 15 minutes over, I think.
Yeah. Closer to like 18, I think. But that's all right. That's all right. We love them. We love the material. And
15
I know
minutes
everyone,
on Bigfoot. I can talk about Bigfoot for days.
Who wouldn't love talking about Bigfoot for extra 15 minutes?
His feet are big. Her feet are big. Sorry, I didn't mean to misgender you.
Yeah. Now we can't air this because you're going to get canceled.
Yeah, dude, I'm going to get canceled for misgendering Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot believers are going to come get you.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening in. We hope to see you for the next episodes. And maybe if you want to, check out all of our other shows. We've mentioned some of them on this episode, like the Open Book Podcast. Check those out. If you think you've enjoyed this, maybe you'll enjoy that.
Hopefully.
But as I was saying, thank you guys so much for listening. I've been your host, Shad.
I'm Brian.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Huzzah.
Take care.